engaging keynote. Definitely had the lettuce Slack blowing up after that keynote with Bonnie. And I told my team that there was going to be a couple dead leads because I emailed my husband and told him he had to listen to it. So if you're joining us and did not listen to this morning's keynote, I will give you the same advice. We'll just give it another few seconds to let a couple other people trickle in and then get started with this session, which may be as emotional and engaging, just in a different way when we're talking about pricing.
Money, I mean, money's not emotional, is it, Lisa?
No,
it's
not
just cut and dry.
That's right. As you're joining us, if you want to pop your name and where you are in the world in the chat, that's always good to know where we're coming from. And then just going to keep watching to see if our numbers stabilize here a little bit. Looks like they are. And I want to give Austin as much time as we can to drop his wisdom. So why don't we go ahead and get started? I'm Lisa Deany with Lettuce. Like you, I'm a solopreneur, as Lettuce has been built by solos for solos. So I will actually start this session by saying, when I started working for Lettuce, I said to our head of marketing, you know who we need to work with? Austin Church. He's amazing. So I am very glad that the rest of you will be getting the benefit of that advice to our head of marketing, but actually just Austin being Austin and amazing. A little housekeeping. The session's going to run about 40 minutes. We will have time for Q&A at the end. As the questions come to your mind, though, drop them in the chat, drop them in the Q&A. The session will also be recorded. It takes about an hour or two for it to load into the agenda, but you can go back there. And then let's jump into it. So next to pipeline questions, the topic that we at Lettuce feel like we hear solos asking about the most is pricing. So good news for all of you. This next speaker, who I already unveiled as Austin Church, has not only built a successful career as a creative entrepreneur, but he has really mastered the art of teaching others how to level up their pricing strategies. Austin started his freelance journey in 2009 after getting laid off from a marketing agency. And for the last 15 years, he's generated, Austin, nearly $2 million as a creative entrepreneur and learned a lot of valuable lessons along the way. He's the founder of Freelance Cake and the author of Free Money, passionate about helping freelancers and consultants find their income lifestyle sweet spot through strategic pricing and positioning. With a unique combination of literary training and marketing experience, he brings analytical precision and creative storytelling to the challenge of pricing. So I'll let him take it away.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction. I'll just go ahead and share my screen and we will get rolling. Okay. So hopefully everybody can see that. Can everyone see that? Give me a, yeah.
That's great.
Okay, cool. All right. So you gotta love a talk that starts with a lettuce pun, right? So I need to go back a slide. Oops. All right. Let me go back one. I'm so delighted to be here. What I want you all to walk away with is supreme confidence in your prices. And to get you there, I'm going to tell 3 short stories, really for the purpose of giving you some questions to ask. A little bit of soul searching, maybe a little bit of reflection. I'm going to take you through 5 numbers, and that will kind of be the heart of this talk, is the 5 numbers you need to know to set smart strategic prices. So that's odd. Let's go this way. Yes, great. I can use a mouse. So a lot of you here already have your own business. Maybe as a kid, you were like me and you had these little business ventures. I want to tell you about my very first one. And I know you're looking at this slide and thinking, okay, fur trapping. Surely he can't mean that his business revolved around fur-bearing mammals. Like, how gross. Surely he's not a monster. Let me reassure you, that is exactly what I mean. I received this catalog in the mail, and I'm going through the catalog and I'm finding these photos, actually illustrations of these unusual pieces of equipment and these strange products with names like Dixie tan paste. And I'm looking in the backyard and I'm like, well, look, here are these squirrels. And then I'm thinking about what I like and what I want more of, which at the time was Fun Dip, my all-time favorite candy. I'm like, I wonder if this is the way to turn squirrels into Fun Dip. And that is so ghastly now that I think about it. But I'm like 9 years old at the time. This somehow makes sense in my 9-year-old brain. This is a good idea. So sit down, I pull out a clipboard, I start making a business plan, running some rough numbers. And I present this plan to my parents. And if there are any parents in the audience today, you can imagine what my parents said. I present my plan to them and they're like, Austin, we can really tell that you put a lot of time and effort into this plan. We do have an empty corner in the garage where you can store your equipment and your merchandise. We think that you should become a fur trapper. We agree. Except, of course, they didn't say that, because that would be horrible, right? Now that I have 3 kids of my own, I'm trying to think about how I would respond if any of the kids ever came to me with a plan like this. They said, that's a terrible idea. Or they were probably more diplomatic than that, but they said, you need to find a different business idea. And even though I can laugh at 9-year-old Austin, and I hope you can laugh at 9-year-old Austin too, especially since that meant the squirrels in the neighborhood were safe from harm, I will say this for 9-year-old Austin, 10-year-old Austin, however old I was, I knew what I wanted. I wanted candy. I wanted more candy. I was also really into fishing at the time. I wanted more fishing lures. I had clarity on what I wanted. I talk to a lot of solopreneurs who know that they need to work on their prices. And they don't realize that the root of the struggle to come up with a solid business model that includes smart strategic prices, the root of that problem is we're often not really sure what it is that we want. Like, we want physical safety, and we want fun, and we want companionship and friendship and intimacy. Like, there's some like high level Maslow's hierarchy of needs type wants, of course. But if I were to say to you, where do you want to be 3 years from now? That's a harder question to answer. And yet having that clarity is so important as you start thinking about prices. What's the point of the extra money if you don't really even know what the money is for, right? So here's the first set of questions I would like for you to answer for yourself some other time. We don't have time today. I hope you'll take a screenshot of this slide. I hope you'll journal through these questions. Are you clear on what you want? What do you want your life to look like in 3 years? And I'll explain why that's so important here in a second. Can you picture the contours of that distant mountain? I heard an author talk about having a distant mountain so that when opportunities come along, you can know, okay, is this opportunity a step toward that distant mountain? Is it a step sideways? Is it a step backward? Having some idea of where you want to go, knowing the contours, helps you orient yourself and make better decisions about opportunities as they come along. So clarity brings confidence. And if you are in a competitive space, the person in that space who is clearest on what they want has a competitive advantage over other people who are just kind of walking in circles. Clarity brings confidence. Clarity gives you a competitive advantage. So I talked about how I would talk more about business model, right? My family and I were down in this little beach town called Port St. Joe. It's in Florida. I walk into a bake shop one morning and, I had a roommate who was a baker at one point in time, and he always had to get up at the crack of dawn. So as I'm talking to the woman who's working the cash register, I make a joke about how she probably had to get in early. Her name was Michaela. Turns out she was the owner, and she said, "You know what? It's actually not too bad. I only had to get up at 6 a.m." And I said, "Well, that is very unusual. I have to commend you." She said, "It wasn't on accident. My husband and I, we have two young children. And when we were talking about opening the bakery, we decided we can't open a bakery that is going to get in the way of the life we want. I don't want to start this business and then not be around for my kids." And so they even were strategic with the menu items that they picked. For example, scones you can make in advance, cut into triangles, freeze. And if you bake scones from frozen, they taste just as good as if you had made them fresh that morning. The same goes with muffin batter. You can make it the day before, you refrigerate it, the muffins are just as good. And I was just so impressed by Michaela because she picked strategic products, processes, and prices that would take her toward the lifestyle that she wanted. And I think that's so unusual, right? Because so often we don't. Our businesses kind of grow up organically around us. Sometimes we feel like our businesses grow us into a corner. And so then we have that first problem, which I already mentioned. Are you even clear on what you want? We also have the second problem. What if you get clear on what you want and then you realize, well, I don't have a business model that is taking me that direction? In fact, I talk to a lot of solopreneurs, freelancers, consultants, agency owners, fractionals, and I hope you'll forgive the very basic illustration here. They have that distant mountain. And when we talk about their products, processes, and prices, they're looking more like the illustration on the left, where I'm like, yeah, you're going the entirely wrong direction. Your business model is a vehicle taking you not to Chicago, but to Los Angeles. So it's not enough to have clarity on where you want to end up. You also need products, processes, prices. You need a complete business model that can get you where you want to go. So some more questions for you. Have you pinpointed the right products? Do you have the right processes? Do you have the right prices? Okay. Third story before we get into those 5 numbers that I told you about. I don't know what it is about me and the beach. I shouldn't go to the beach because apparently things happen at the beach. But I was at the beach, St. George Island, again in Florida, with my family. Those of you who have been doing the solopreneur thing for a while understand what I'm about to say. I cheated on my vacation. I was outside enjoying the sand and the sun and the waves and, my kids chasing seagulls. I sneak back inside thinking, I'm going to get a little bit of work done. Well, one of the things I needed to do was just some bill paying stuff. So open up one browser window. Here's my online banking dashboard on the left. Open up another browser window. It's my credit card dashboard on the right. I'm sitting at this table at this place called Gull Cottage, St. George Island, looking at my computer screen, and there's a problem. And the problem is that the amount of money in my bank account won't cover my credit card balance. Now, that may not seem like a big deal. It isn't. Carrying a balance on your credit card, not that big of a deal at the end of the day. But to give you a bit more context, we had paid off all of our debt in 2013, my wife and I. Fast forward 2 years, and I'm thinking, how could we already be back in this position? How could I have been so stupid? How could I have made so many bad decisions? My self-talk was really unhealthy that day. So there was the event, which, bad things happen, crap happens, disappointing things happen. You carry a balance on a credit card. There's this concept in Buddhism called the first arrow, and then corresponding concept called the second arrow. First arrow is the event, the thing that happens. Crap happens, right? We have a choice, though, whether we just sort of endure the pain or discomfort or frustration of the first arrow, the event that happens. We have a choice in whether we prolong the pain of that with the second arrow, which is the story that you tell about yourself, or how you internalize the first arrow. There's the event, and then we have a choice. Will I internalize this? Crap happens, but am I now a piece of crap? Right? The mistake wasn't carrying a balance on the credit card. The mistake was the story I told myself about myself. How could I have been so stupid? So how does this fit into the two stories and the insights I've already shared? You can get clear on what you want your life to look like 3 years from now. You can get clear on the products, processes, and prices, or the business model you need to get there. And yet your identity and your beliefs can still trip you up. I experienced that. Fine. We have a little bit of debt. I can pay it off. I've done this before. I have intelligence. I have resources. I have resourcefulness. I'm going to make a plan. Let's go get after it, right? I could have told myself that story. So my question for you is, okay, you're here today. You're wanting to learn about pricing. Where are you in your identity with money, with pricing? Maybe you've had some disappointments. What's the story you're telling yourself about your scars? I was not telling myself the story that would accelerate me toward that distant mountain that day. From behavioral psychology, we can take a couple of concepts that will help us here. First one is identity foreclosure. And I took this from a conversation with Maya Shankar, so this is not original to me by any means. Something happens, or maybe a series of events happen. That series of events can cause you to prematurely commit to an identity. You haven't had time to explore all the different ways that you can be, and yet you prematurely say, well, I'm just not good with money, or I'm just not a high earning solopreneur. The counterpart to identity foreclosure, though, is identity priming. Acting in ways that are consistent with the identity you aspire to have. We have a choice. You can say, well, I have struggled and always will, and I'm going to set my prices accordingly. Or I can be a high earning solopreneur and I'm going to set prices based on that identity. We have a choice: identity foreclosure, identity priming. I think you'll see now why it was important that I get into this stuff before we get into the 5 numbers. We can't outperform our beliefs. So no matter what methodology I give you for pricing, you're still going to be bumping into the limitations that you've put on yourself through your identity and your beliefs. You may need to do a little bit of work in that area. I don't know. I did. So, question: is your current identity and your current set of beliefs setting you up for life-changing income? Or do you need to start telling yourself a better story about your capabilities? Because the fact is, you will not charge what you're worth until you start believing in your worthiness. Now, if you are anything like me, some of this psychology stuff starts to make you squirm. So I promise we're at the end of this part of the talk. Please take a screenshot of these questions. I sincerely hope you'll take time to answer them. This work that you may need to do in your basements, like around identity and beliefs, is as important, if not more important, than anything you do with your pricing. Okay, so you got to get clear on what you want your life to look like in 3 years. You need the right business model, the right products, processes, and prices. Then you need the right identity and beliefs. And I shouldn't say the right. You may need some slight upgrades before you'll really give yourself permission to go hard after what you want. Okay, let's get into the numbers. And there are 5 of them. As I've coached people through this process, wrote an entire book about this process, I've found a lot of thinking that people need to shed in order to embrace a better approach to pricing. So that's what I mean by old thinking and new thinking here. A lot of solopreneurs, when they first get into business for themselves, are like, okay, I need to set prices. What's competitive? Like, what are other people charging? Or they think, well, what was I making at my last job? What was my last salary? If I break that down into an hourly rate, let me just try to match that or do a little bit better. The better way to start is by asking, how much does my life really cost? Like, if I draw a circle around my personal expenses, business operating expenses, and what I'll owe in tax, how much does my life really cost? That's where we need to be starting from the get-go with pricing. So I'll give you an example from a coaching client. Kristen is a freelance writer. I will use freelance writing examples. Obviously, insert your solopreneur focus here, right? Okay, so Kristen was like, hey, business operating, personal expenses, that came in around $5,000 a month. Her tax percentage is a little higher than mine. I live in Tennessee where we have no state income tax, but hers was 30%. So pre-tax, she's like, I need to be making $7,150 a month or $85,800 a year. That's how much Kristen's life costs. That's the starting point. That's key number 1, what I call your survival number. Price for your life. I can't stress this enough. Don't set your prices based on someone else's life. Don't respond to your competitors. Start with what your life costs. Okay, let's move on to the number, key number 2. That's a mouthful. Old thinking. Hey, what do I need to make each month? How many hours can I work each week? What should my hourly rate be? New thinking. How many hours can I realistically bill to clients based on the weeks that I can actually work in a year, which won't be all 52, based on how many hours I can work each week on average, and based on my effectiveness, right? Effectiveness is so important. I'll explain what I mean by that. You're going to work hours, whether it's 40 or 50 or 60 or 20 or 30 or whatever, right? You cannot bill for all of those hours. So the percentage of hours that you work that you can actually bill for, that's your effectiveness. So in Kristen's case, she realized I'll, work 47 weeks. The other 5 weeks I'll either be on vacation, celebrating a holiday. Maybe you leave some wiggle room in there for getting sick or, traveling over a long weekend or whatever, right? But 47 out of 52 weeks, she's going to have an average 40-hour work week. She thinks she can bill 60% of those hours, which is better than me because I'm typically at 50%. So what her math gave her is 1,128 hours across a year. That is her true availability for client work, for billable work. So whether you do client work or not, it's helpful as a solopreneur to figure out what is my true availability, because I can't charge for all the hours I work, only a percentage. And I certainly shouldn't be accounting for working 52 out of 52 weeks, or you get what I'm saying. So true availability, that's key number 2. I already kind of mentioned this. My effectiveness is at about 50%. And I would tell you, if you can only bill 20 hours a week, just be honest with that. Don't fudge your numbers. Start with honesty and build your numbers based on honesty, not being overly optimistic. Okay, third number. A lot of us, especially when we're newer to the game, are like, well, how much can I get? The better question is, how much do I have to make? I'll explain. Kristen, she needs to make $85,800 per year. This is not a luxury. This is, hey, I don't want to go into debt. I need to be able to pay my bills on time. That's going to take $85,800 a year. Can she cut expenses? I'm sure. Maybe she needs to eat out less, right? Maybe she needs to drink less fancy coffee. Who knows? We can all cut things from our budget, but there is a number that's like, this is what my life costs. Her true availability is 1,128. When she divides her true availability into her survival number, she gets a survival rate, which is $76 per hour. She needs to make that on average for her billable hours across a year in order to stay out of financial trouble. I should explain that I'm not advocating that any of you charge hourly. Your rates are not your prices. Your rates are your private internal units of calculation that you use to come up with prices. I haven't charged hourly in years. What do? I use my rates to calculate prices and put those in front of my clients. Okay. I knew that might have come up in questions, so I just wanted to go ahead and answer that now. Okay. So we are so much better at negotiation and at self-advocacy if we know why we must make this, and we can't afford to say yes to a project that pays us this. So that's what I mean by, the old thinking, new thinking slide. What do I have to make? It's important that you arrive at your survival number. So you're like, I have to make this. And if a project comes in and you're doing some quick back of the napkin math to figure out how many hours it will take you to do a project, and you realize, ooh, that would probably put me below my survival rate, you have to say no. You have to. You will make more confident decisions about which projects you say no to if you know your survival rate and see that a new opportunity would put you below your survival rate and not above it. At the same time, screw survival. Like, none of us got into this just to scrape by. We want to thrive, and that's why we have to keep going with these numbers. So key number 4, we're so tempted, especially in the early days, or based on personality to think about what's realistic, I would encourage you to think, what would I do with the extra money if I had it? So I've had dozens of conversations, probably well over 100 now, where I've asked the other person, what would you do with an extra $20, $25, $50,000 this year? And the answers that come back are so cool. It's very rarely buy a Lamborghini or finally get my private jet. It's always much more interesting things like, oh, I'd love to pay for my niece's college tuition. Or one of my all-time favorites, a woman wanted to take her grandmother to Japan to see her great aunt because her grandmother and great aunt hadn't seen each other in person in 20 years. I'm like, yes, that's what money's for. You need a strong emotional connection to your pricing so that you advocate for higher prices. You'll be better at self-advocacy if you know this is what the money's for. If I can win projects at this higher price, then that means the trip with my grandmother. That means my husband quits a job he hates. That means our kids can go to private school. That means we're positioned to be a lot more generous to our local church or our synagogue or some, cause you care about in your community, right? So it's just important to know it's never about money. Like, who cares about the money? But money does mean options. And when we think about money, we're really thinking about the things that money symbolizes: freedom, autonomy, going on the vacation, getting the elective medical procedure. Money means options. And you need to have that strong emotional connection so that you will show up in conversations with clients confident that you're worth it. Okay, so Kristen, she was like, an extra 20K a year would be amazing. That meant her dream number was $105,800. So survival number, 85, dream number, 105. We've got one last number to go through, and then I will finish up. So old thinking. What rate can I get, right? New thinking. What rate should I use to calculate project prices? Because if I get that rate will not only cover my immediate needs, but move me definitively toward my long-term financial and lifestyle goals. So in Kristen's case, she's going to take her dream number. She's going to divide it by her true availability. And she's going to end up with a dream rate of $94 an hour. And that rate is what she will then use to calculate prices for her projects or engagements. So you might be wondering, okay, what does that look like? I'll just show you very quickly. I mentioned that she's a freelance writer. So she might think of a project she does on a regular basis, like a long form narrative case study. She might think about all the time that she needs to invest on different tasks or sub projects, beginning to end. Add it all up, maybe round up a little bit. She ends up at this estimate of 13 hours. So when she comes up with her project price, it's going to be 13 hours times her dream number. But I would give you one more trick just to really help you make your prices sustainable. And I call this trick pessimistic pricing. How many of you, when you have done some work for a client, have noticed a little thing called scope creep? Like, scopes always creep. That's just what they do. Like, the project always evolves. And so rather than fight or feel weird about the little requests, like, hey, can we hop on a quick call? I just need you to answer some questions for me. And the client, it's a client. Is it technically scope creep? I'm not sure. Easiest solution, right? You take your dream rate, estimate the time you're going to put in, do that first calculation, and then your pessimistic price is just adding 20% on top. And that extra cushion can absorb all those little requests or favors or last minute changes. Maybe it's not truly scope creep, but it really can hurt your effective hourly rate, meaning you're watching how much money you're making on the project go down while you're watching your time go up. And this is true even if you don't charge hourly. So just make sure your prices are pessimistic, meaning they account for human behavior, because clients often just want some extra small things. So survival number, true availability, survival rate, dream number, dream rate. I think we may have already put the handout at the top when we started the session. If not, if you want a worksheet that you can use for free to work through these numbers, scan the QR code, be my guest. Okay, let's end this. I was in 8th grade. I was playing football, cornerback. It was a practice. They ran a sweep to my side. I ran the play perfectly. How do I know I ran it perfectly? Because I was a couple of steps ahead of the running back who was coming to block me. How do I know I was a couple of steps ahead? Well, because Chris stepped on my leg and it snapped. So I was out for the season. Pretty soon after that happened, I was over at my grandma's house, just sort of feeling sorry for myself, as 8th graders sometimes do. 14-year-old, just like teenager, feeling sorry for myself. And I said under my breath, not even realizing that my grandma could hear me, "Why me?" And this grandma was cranky most of the time. And she said, "Well, why not you?" Now, that probably wasn't the most empathetic or compassionate thing to say, but it stuck with me. She had a point. Bad things happen. So, of course, some of them would happen to me. But I actually took it a different way then, and I take it a different way now. Like when it comes time to raise your prices, I would encourage you to think, why not me? Like someone out there is going to win. Someone out there is going to charge premium prices. Someone out there is going to build a thriving business. Why not me? My secret agenda with this whole talk it's not about pricing. It's not even about the psychology stuff. It's just, I would like for you to believe in yourself more than you already do. You no doubt have incredible talent locked inside of you. It's waiting to come out. And I would just like for you to believe in yourself a little bit more than you already do. I'd like for your prices to reflect that. So someone out there is going to win. Someone out there is going to charge premium prices. And I would say, now that you have a process, why not you? You're worth it. I wrote an entire book on this. If you're the sort of person who needs a book to really marinate in, grab the book. It is not expensive. QR code there. And that is it. Thank you. Let's move on to some questions.
Yeah, actually, Austin, the first question is about your book. Can you say the name of it again and give us?
Sure.
Where can we find it besides that QR code?
Yeah, I didn't even mention the name of the book. It's called Free Money. It is a pricing and money mindset guide for freelancers, solopreneurs, consultants. So it's on Amazon. If you just type in free money book, it'll come up.
Great. And for those of you that didn't get the QR code for the handout, Austin has generously given it to us for the solo challenge starting on Monday. Everyone will get an email starting Monday morning to join those next 30 days where we're going to take all the learning we've had over the last couple and give you bite-sized little projects to do to put that learning into action. Okay, diving into a couple more questions. Can you talk a little bit more about how to estimate billable hours?
So a lot of that comes from tracking your time, which I hate. Like it's so tedious and cumbersome. But when you think about your effectiveness and you think about what a realistic number of hours or percentage of hours you work in an average week, how many of those can you bill for? That just depends on you. Right now, there are always ways to increase efficiency and, spend less time on admin while getting the work done. You always need to be spending time on marketing for sure. But when it comes to like, how do I know how many billable hours how do I know how many hours I can bill for each week? If you are just not sure, I would start at 50% or like 20 to 25 hours a week. I think that's realistic. If you're like Kristen and you get up to like 60% or even higher, that would make you extraordinary. That would make you unusual. For most of us, I think 50% effectiveness is a really good benchmark.
And then, of course, I would be remiss to say, if you want to bring down the finance time, check out Lettuce.
Just saying. Okay.
Sorry, I had to do it.
How much time are you spending on your bookkeeping, sir?
That's right. Happy to help. How do you take into account for the fact you're not always going to have a project? The question is, you may be available 47 weeks a year, but you might not have a project for 47 weeks a year.
Right. So hopefully you've already kind of accounted for that with effectiveness, right? Because if you are not mistakenly thinking that you can bill 40 hours a week and you're thinking that you can only bill something like 50%, a big chunk of the time you have left over should be spent on marketing. And then your prices need to assume that you are going to have downtime, right? If you think, well, hey, my survival number is $8,000 a month, you need to look back and historically say an $8,000 a month should not assume that I was absolutely booked solid. $8,000 a month should assume there's going to be some natural fluctuation. So again, I wish I could share a perfect way to say, well, if I'm not always going to be booked solid, how does that affect my prices? And I'm like, that's yet another reason to charge premium prices, because you will not always be booked solid. And even when you are booked solid, you still need to be spending time on marketing.
Yes. And there are still a lot of really good questions in the Q&A, although we have hit time. And I'm moderating the next session, so I need to move to the next virtual move. So I want to thank you, Austin, and thank the audience for being so engaged. I'm sure you can connect with all of us on LinkedIn to get any more of these outstanding questions or check out Austin's book. And hopefully see you guys in some of the next sessions later this afternoon. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for being here. Peace.